welcome to the episode of the Live Network with Kevin Barry this time. This episode is sponsored by the Rammer Theatre in Cavan. Thank you, Porrick and the Live Network.
It's great to see you, Dani. How's it going?
I am good. Thanks for being here, Kevin. What beverage do you have there, Kevin, in your library?
I have a perky espresso. I drink
Lovely.
too much espresso. It's the only thing that keeps me upright at this time of the day, you know.
Okay, well, I have my cup of berries. So Kevin, today we're going to do a little insight into Nightboat to Tangier. So you're going to start off by reading an excerpt from the novel.
I will. I'll just take it from the start, Dani, the first couple of pages, just to kind of set it up from chapter 1, which is titled The Girls and the Dogs. Would you say there's any end in sight, Charlie? I'd say you nearly have an answer to that question already, Morris. 2 Irishmen, sombre, in the dank light of the terminal, make gestures of long sufferance and woe. They are born to such gestures and offer them easily. It is night in the old Spanish port of Algeciras. Oh, and this is as awful a place as you could muster. You'd want the eyes sideways in your head. The ferry terminal has a haunted air, a sinister feeling. It reeks of tired bodies and dread. There are scraps of frayed posters, the missing, customs announcements, the narco-trafficante. A blind man roils in night sweat and clicks his teeth to sell lottery tickets like a fat, rattling serpent. He's doing nothing for the place. The Irishmen look out blithely at the faces that pass by in a blur of the 7 distractions: love, grief, pain, sentimentality, avarice, lust, and want of debt. There's a hatch with a sign marked "Información, tell us more," and a ledge tilts out from it questioningly. Morris Hearn and Charlie Redmond sit on a bench a few yards west of the hatch. They're in their low 50s. The years are rolling out like tide now. There's old weather on their faces, on the hard lines of their jaws, on their chaotic mouths, but they retain just about a rakish air. Now, in precise tandem, they turn their faces to the hatch marked "Información." You want to hop back there, Charlie, have another word, see about this next boat that's due in? Yeah, but the same lad is still on, Morris, the lad with the bitter face on him. He's not a talker, Moss. Try him, Charlie. Charlie Redmond rises up from the bench in a bundle of sighs. He unfolds his long bones, approaches the hatch. He's lame. He drags the right peg in a soft, brushing motion with practiced ease. Throws his elbows onto the counter. His aura is of brassy menace. He wears a corner boy's grimace. His Spanish pronunciation is very much from the north side of Cork City. "Hola, buenos noches," he says. Waits it out for a long beat, looks over his shoulder, calls back to Morris. No response, Moss. Bitter face on him still. Morris shakes his head sadly. "I fucking hate ignorance," he says. Charlie tries again. "Hola? Excuse me, trying to find out about this next boat coming in, this boat from Tangier, or going out." Silence, a gesture. Charlie looks back to his friend and mimics the Informacionistas shrug. "All I'm getting here is the shoulders, Morris." "Habla inglés" is what you say to him, Charlie. But Charlie throws up his hands and shuffles back to the bench. "Habla my hole," he says. All he's doing is give me the shoulders, give me the eyes. Facing him like a bad marriage, Morris says. Now he turns sharply and screeches at the hatch, "Lose the fucking face!" And now humorously grins. And so we're off with Boris and our two fading gangsters from the city of Cork.
Yeah, thanks, Kevin. It's always lovely to hear you read your own work. That relationship, the key relationship between Charlie and Morris, you know, like at one point he refers to him as his oldest friend and his oldest rival. I suppose they have a complicated relationship in ways, but there's a fierce loyalty or a bond between them, isn't there, in the book? It's interesting to see how that unravels.
Yeah, they what I like, you know, when you finish a novel, anything you've written, at first you kind of see what's wrong with it, and then after a while it's passed, you see what you like about it. And kind of what I like about it now, it's a couple of years since I finished it, of course. The paperback is just out. But what I like about it is how much it kind of doesn't tell us really. It doesn't go into too much detail about their criminal history as such. We get kind of broad strokes, and about their kind of their rivalry in love at one point with Morris's late wife. So it tells us just enough, I think, to keep the reader going through it. They're an interesting pair for me, Morris and Charlie, because they were hanging around a long while in the shed out the back here where I work. You know, they kept showing up, and they were trying to break into short stories, and that wasn't working out at all. They would kind of immediately destroy the short story. They're very big characters, you know, they're large, they talk a lot, and I decided I had to give them their own story and find out who they were.
Yeah.
And try to.
That's interesting. When you say they were, you know, interrupting, breaking into other stories, would they break in as a duo or as individuals?
Yeah, it was always this kind of double act with all this kind of going on, all this kind of talk. I eventually realized I wanted to get past the stage where they were just these kind of caricatural, fading gangsters and try and find out who they really were.
That's interesting, because I wanted to ask you, Kevin, I suppose, especially coming towards the middle and the latter part of the book, and kind of without giving away sort of not so much the ending, but the key kind of points in the story for people who might have not finished it or read it yet. When you say that they appeared for the book and as a duo, I'm curious because I saw kind of Cynthia and Dilly as this sort of, maybe antidote isn't the right kind of word, but they are kind of like a female duo in the book that, especially towards the end, we start to understand what their relationship was and what kind of what went on between them, and the very critical sort of conversations that we realized then really impacted the males in the story and where they would find themselves in this whole episode of waiting for the Nightboat, you know. And I thought that was interesting. So when you were writing the story, or as you started to give them their own story, how did the blocks then, say, of Cynthia and Dilly come in as characters, you know?
Yeah, Cynthia is Morris's ex-wife, who we learn quickly is now deceased, and Dilly is the daughter who's gone missing. And they were always kind of there initially as kind of offstage characters, as these kind of presences just offstage. And then when they started to come into it in the writing of the novel, the book really shifted in tone, I think, when came into it. And it kind of, for me, it became more real in a kind of way, you know. I remember one morning actually just writing a very quiet, kind of simple scene where Dilly and Cynthia are having coffee in Cork City in the Crawford Gallery, and Dilly just asks her mother, did you ever see them violent, you know? And there was something about writing that just kind of half a page or a page of a scene, and there's just sometimes a paragraph you write works like a tuning fork for the whole thing. And I just remember writing that, and I said to myself, now it's becoming real, you know. It's becoming a story, and you start to see the ramifications of their lives, Morris and Charlie's lives, beyond their own thing, you know, and the effect it has elsewhere. And I think that the tone really shifts quite radically when the women come into it. With the men, it's a lot of patter, it's a lot of very funny talk, it's a lot of bluster. But then that goes, and it becomes a kind of a quieter story, I think, in the second half.
Lisa McInerney said in her her blurb on the book that it was you at your most tender, she thought, in this book. And I thought,
I have a tender side.
I know you have a tender side. I think it's there in your other work too, but I think maybe what she was talking about is the female characters, and kind of like you're saying, the book shifted. Like, I think even those scenes, their perspective, there's something about the perspective of the women, because like you say, there's that conversation about the violence, and then there's the other scene where the daughter and Morris give an account of when he drives her and he brings her off that time, and, you know, locks the doors in the car, and you see it from his point of view and her point of view, and in her description of it, when she says in the end, and the look on his face, and I know that was love, you know. And there's something very kind of
that scene is kind of the critical scene in the book, really, when when Dilly's a kid and Morris is at a really, really low ebb in his life. And it almost, without giving too much away, it almost turns into a really horrific scene and then doesn't, just kind of pulls back. But yeah, it's again, there's something about Dilly. I mean, Dilly is in the novel very little, really. You know, she's maybe shows up in you know, a fifth of it or a quarter of its pages. But somehow, so many readers come to me and thought the first thing they mentioned to me is Dilly. They're really interested in her and who she is and how's she doing now. As readers, is she okay? I think she probably is. But it's yeah, often like a character doesn't need to be all over the pages to really give a story weight and to really give a story it's kind of proper heft.
You open the book with that quote from Lorca, in Spain the dead are more alive than in any other country of the world. And I suppose, like, Dilly, like you say, she maybe only does appear on, you know, fourth or fifth of the pages, but it's the ghostly kind of hauntedness of her and the kind of memories and this web that you try to find your way around as the reader to understand. We know she hasn't seen her father in 3 years. We know that she's been missing. We know that they're trying to find her. But there's something about the ghostly presence of her. And I wanted to ask about the setting, you know, when I read that at the start of the book, and then to the way you described, even you're reading there, the port itself, Spain, and the setting of the book, was that, when did that kind of come in, or how did that come in, you know, because it seems like that's very tied to that whole idea of the ghosts and the unreal and the unknown.
Yeah, it's funny. I think often the best research you do for a novel is you don't realize it's research at the time. And for about since late 90s, I think since 1999, most winters I've escaped to Spain for a few weeks or a few months sometimes. I've always gone there. I've always gone to the south of Spain just to get a blast of light in the winter when it's dark and grey and wet and awful in the Sligo Hills. You know, I head south. I make a jailbreak. And over the last few years, then I was kind of asking myself, where's my Spain book? You know, where's my Spain novel? I had all the texture from knowing the place quite well. And I couldn't figure out how to do it until one day I had the thought of, oh, what about my two Cork gangsters? What if I just put them down in Spain? We'd be away in a hack. And it's funny, it's when characters and setting click together for you, that's when you know you have a book. That's when you know you have a novel. And as soon as I put Morris and Charlie in the gloriously kind of seedy ferry terminal down in Algeciras, I heard that kind of click, and I thought, okay, this is, I have my kind of stage now for it, you know, and I can see what.
Yeah. Well, it's a great book, Kevin. You know, as you know, I'm a big fan of your work anyway, but great book, and you really are a master of dialogue. And you know, anyone who likes your writing will really have enjoyed this. I know Pádraig McIntyre of the Rammer loved it. So thanks a million for doing this episode of the series.
Pádraig was in a radio play for me a few years ago. I love Pádraig.
Okay, yeah. So yeah, thanks a million for taking part in the series, and I look forward to seeing you again in real life soon, Kevin.
Best of all in Noctons, Dani.
Yes.
Yeah. You're the only one that could be in a pub. All right.